Society whispers rules meant to keep you obedient, predictable, and easily controlled. But here's the truth no one dares to say: the individuals who rise, the ones who shape the world, are those who quietly and ruthlessly break the very rules everyone else blindly follows. In this video, we expose the hidden commandments you must violate if you want power instead of permission, control instead of compliance, sovereignty instead of servitude. Most people live as if the structures around them were sacred customs, expectations, the right way to behave. They cling to these illusions because they fear the cost of thinking for themselves. But as I learned long ago, order is merely a cage disguised as virtue. Every society, no matter how civilized, builds invisible chains to keep its citizens tame. But you are here because something in you refuses to be domesticated. You sense that beneath the polite surface of rules lies a battlefield of ambition, manipulation, and hidden hierarchy. To endure it, you must not seek harmony. You must seek advantage, and advantage belongs to those who are willing to break the rules others worship. Today, we strip away the moral facade and reveal the darker lessons that grant real influence in a world that only pretends to be fair. Most people move through life with the dull certainty of livestock, convinced that conformity is both safety and virtue. They follow the crowd because the crowd feels warm, familiar, and comforting. But ask yourself, has history ever remembered the obedient? Has power ever belonged to the one who merely blended in? Conformity is the silent assassin of ambition, and society worships it because it keeps you predictable, easier to manage, easier to dismiss, easier to rule. You were conditioned to believe that fitting in is the path to acceptance. Yet acceptance is rarely granted to those capable of shaping events. Look at the rulers of old. They knew that the herd accepts the shepherd only when it fears what would happen without him. The difference between the powerful and the powerless has never been morality. It has always been the willingness to step outside the invisible lines that most never question. Think for a moment about the fate of innovators. Da Vinci, Galileo, even the daring statesmen who challenged the norms of their age. They were ridiculed long before they were revered. The crowd mocks what it cannot understand and resists what forces it to confront its own limitations. But over time, the very ideas once scorned become the principles of a new order. This is the irony of conformity. Society punishes the non-conformist, yet eventually depends on him. When you think like everyone else, you become replaceable. And what is more dangerous in a competitive world than being so forgettable that your absence changes nothing? The rulers I observed in Florence learned this early. They cultivated distinctiveness, not through loud rebellion, but through subtle divergence. They broke patterns quietly, strategically, so that their presence became impossible to ignore. Ask yourself, what patterns do people expect from you? How predictable is your behavior? Predictability is a kind of death. It allows others to anticipate your moves, interpret your intentions, and shape your destiny before you even act. When you follow the crowd, you announce to the world, I am safe to overlook, and nothing destroys your leverage more completely. Modern life is no different. Watch how people online rush to echo the same opinions, mimic the same trends, adopt the same expressions. Even their outrage is synchronized, like a well-trained choir. The illusion of individuality has replaced true thought. So when someone dares to step out of line, when someone questions what everyone else accepts without reflection, they gain immediate psychological power, not because they are correct, but because they break the script. The human mind is drawn to those who disrupt expectations. This is why controlled non-conformity is one of the most potent forms of influence. Consider politicians who defy tradition, leaders who speak harsh truths, entrepreneurs who challenge sacred assumptions. Whether loved or hated, they command attention. And attention is the gateway to authority. The crowd may not admire them, but it cannot ignore them. And that is far more valuable. But understand this, breaking conformity does not mean reckless rebellion. True power lies in selective deviation. You must choose the norms you break as a surgeon chooses where to cut. Strategic, precise, and always with a purpose. Break only the rules that restrict your potential, not the ones that camouflage your intent. There is wisdom in discomforting others, but folly in destabilizing yourself. Here is the psychological truth people assume, that those who stand apart possess insight the crowd lacks. They project competence, strength, and even danger onto the non-conformist. This projection becomes a form of leverage. If they believe you see what they cannot, they begin reacting to you rather than acting on their own. And once they react, you can direct. You must ask yourself, are you ready to stand apart long enough to be seen? Are you willing to endure misunderstanding, envy, or resistance? Power does not come to those who blend in. It comes to those who endure the loneliness that clarity demands. Because the moment you stop thinking like the herd loses all power over you. And when that happens, the next rule you break becomes even more dangerous. Predictability is the quiet surrender most people never realize they make. When others can anticipate your next move, they gain the power to shape your choices before you even act. Think about that. If someone can read you easily, they can corner you, disarm you, and use your own patterns as weapons against you. So I ask you, how many decisions in your life have been influenced not by strength, but by the fact that someone knew what you would do? In history, the downfall of many rulers began the moment their enemies understood their rhythm. A leader who reacts the same way to pressure, who always forgives, who always retaliates, who always seeks peace, becomes a leader whose actions can be predicted, and therefore controlled. Look at ancient courts. The most feared ministers were not the strongest or the most ruthless. They were the ones no one could read. The ones whose silence made others nervous. The ones whose intentions lived behind a mask. You too must learn the art of calculated opacity. Not deception for its own sake, but the strategic withholding of your inner world. Why? Because the human mind fills empty spaces with assumptions, and assumptions give you power. When others do not know what you think, they begin imagining possibilities. And these imagined possibilities often intimidate more than anything you could reveal directly. Consider this in your own life. Have you ever noticed how people grow uneasy around someone who does not react immediately? Someone who listens, pauses, and reveals nothing. That silence becomes a mirror in which they project their insecurities, their motives, their fears. Suddenly, they tell you more than you ask for. They reveal details you never needed to request. Their need to interpret you exposes them. Predictability is the currency of the powerless. It is the trait of those who move through the world convinced that honesty means transparency. But transparency is a gift only a fool gives freely. A predator does not announce its next step. A strategist does not explain his intentions. Only the naive believe that being understood is always to their benefit. Think about relationships, personal, professional, political. The person who is emotionally readable is always the one who loses leverage. If they show anger too quickly, others push their buttons. If they show eagerness too openly, others exploit their desire. If they show loyalty too easily, others take them for granted. Predictability gives people a map to your vulnerabilities. The great statesmen of old understood this. They cultivated unpredictability not as chaos, but as calculation. They revealed intentions slowly, spoke sparingly, and acted with a timing that left others guessing. Even allies were kept uncertain. Not out of cruelty, but because certainty breeds complacency and complacency breeds betrayal. An ally who cannot predict you cannot underestimate you. Ask yourself, how often do you present your entire mind to others? How often do you explain your reasoning, defend your opinions, justify your motives? Every time you do, you give away the blueprint of your thinking. You show them how to influence you. You show them how to press you, move you, or weaken you. But when you cultivate unpredictability, you reclaim the advantage. You become the figure others watch, calculate, and adapt to. You set the tempo. You decide the emotional climate. You turn every interaction into a game in which the other player moves first. And weaker players always move first. And here is the psychological truth few dare to acknowledge: a people respect what they cannot easily understand. Mystery sharpens your presence. Silence amplifies your power. A mind that does not expose itself immediately becomes a force others instinctively protect themselves against. You are not feared for aggression. You are feared for possibility. So learn to pause. Learn to step outside your own impulses. Learn to let others reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. Power lies not in being loud, but in being studied and never fully understood. Because when your next move cannot be predicted, the entire board begins to rearrange around you. And in the next lesson, you'll see how this unpredictability becomes even more lethal when matched with something far darker. The wise always guard the shadows they command. Most people are raised to believe that power is something granted, something bestowed upon them by authority, reputation, or the approval of others. A comforting illusion, isn't it? To think that if you work hard, wait patiently, and behave correctly, someone will eventually recognize your worth. But ask yourself honestly, has waiting ever given you anything except the chance to watch others take what should have been yours? In politics, in business, even in the smallest social circles, power is almost never given. It is taken, quietly, swiftly, and often by those who appear least entitled to it. History makes this painfully clear. Think of the minor officials who rose above nobles simply because they dared to act when others hesitated. They seized initiative in moments when the world held its breath. And because hesitation is the most common human reflex, the bold find far less competition than they fear. You see, people cling to the belief that authority exists to protect them. They respect hierarchy as though it were sacred. But hierarchy is nothing more than an agreement held together by fear and convenience. Once you understand this, deference stops feeling natural and starts feeling absurd. Why should you kneel before someone whose only advantage is that others have knelt first? Consider the courts of Renaissance Italy, where the truly powerful were not always the kings or dukes, but the advisors who dared to speak when others stayed silent. They took action in the shadows, manipulating outcomes long before formal decisions were announced. They understood the principle: you must learn authority as a costume. State robes, aristocratic bloodlines, job titles, none of these matter unless others believe in them. And belief fades quickly when someone steps forward and acts with certainty. Now look at your own life. How many times have you held back, waiting for approval, waiting for someone to say, "You may proceed"? That instinct is the very thing that weakens you. People who chase permission always end up following the will of those who do not. Even in simple situations, a meeting, a conversation, a negotiation, the person who acts first defines the parameters for everyone else. The person who hesitates becomes an accessory to the ambitions of others. Here is where psychology exposes another uncomfortable truth. The human mind assumes that the one who takes charge deserves to. Confidence is read as competence. Initiative is read as legitimacy. Most people are so relieved when someone makes a decision that they barely notice who made it, or whether that person had the right. This is why those who hesitate become invisible, while those who act shape the environment around them. Let me ask you, how many opportunities have passed you not because you lacked ability, but because you lacked audacity? How many times did you allow someone less skilled to rise simply because they moved first? Understand this deeply. Initiative is not aggression. It is the refusal to surrender your fate to someone else's timetable. Think back to the rise of minor conquerors, the ones who built empires from dust. Their advantage was rarely resources or noble blood. It was the clarity to recognize moments of weakness in others. When rivals waited for certainty, they acted. When others hoped for permission, they advanced. They created the conditions under which they later claimed legitimacy. And here is where manipulation enters. Once you take the first step, others begin adjusting around you. They rationalize your initiative as destiny or leadership. They follow because following is easier than questioning. You create momentum, and momentum blinds people to the fact that you began with nothing but willingness. But you must be strategic, not reckless. Taking initiative does not mean charging blindly. It means acting before others are prepared, choosing the moment when hesitation is greatest, and exploiting the paralysis that comfort breeds in ordinary minds. It means refusing to let fear be the reason someone else shapes your world. Ask yourself now, are you ready to step forward when others freeze? Are you willing to be the one who acts rather than the one who watches? Because the truth is this: permission is the currency of the powerless. Initiative is the language of those who rule. And once you grasp this, the next rule you must break will demand something even darker: the strength to control not only your actions, but the emotions that drive or betray you. Power is a fragile illusion for those who tie it to morality. Society insists that to be admired, respected, or trusted, one must appear good, virtuous, and principled. But ask yourself, has being good ever guaranteed influence? Has morality ever protected the ambitious from betrayal? The world does not reward virtue, it rewards effectiveness. And effectiveness often requires a cold willingness to act beyond the constraints of approval. Consider the rulers of old. The prince who seeks only to be loved is often the first to fall. Think of Cesare Borgia, whose brilliance lay not in kindness, but in ruthless calculation. He understood that moral approval is a mask others wear to hide fear, envy, or weakness. To depend on it is to surrender your liberty. To act beyond it is to claim control. Influence is never earned through consensus alone. It is seized through strategy, timing, and the courage to violate expectations. You must ask yourself, how often do you hesitate because you care what others think? How many opportunities have slipped through your hands because approval was a condition you could not meet? Every second you defer to perception, someone else is moving, acting, taking. Approval is fleeting, results endure. Those who wait to be seen as good are always 2 steps behind those who act with decisive clarity, unencumbered by the judgment of the timid. History is littered with examples. Look to Machiavelli's Florence, where ministers, generals, and condottieri understood that public perception is a tool, not a guide. They wielded reputation like a weapon, sometimes to inspire loyalty, sometimes to instill fear, but never to restrain action. A leader who bends to morality is a leader who bends to everyone else's expectations. He becomes predictable, containable, disposable. And what of the mind that desires approval? Psychological insight tells us it is driven by the same mechanism as obedience of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of disapproval. You give away power not when you act, but when you allow this fear to dictate your choices. Every time you compromise effectiveness to maintain appearances, you invite the world to manipulate you. Do you see? The pursuit of goodness is often a clever form of self-imprisonment. Yet this does not mean recklessness. There is a subtle art here, the art of appearing virtuous while acting with precision. The art of performing morality as a tool, not as a creed. Leaders who mastered this skill, think of Cardinal Richelieu or even Sun Tzu's generals, understood that outward approval is a currency to be spent strategically. Spend too freely, and it depletes. Guard it carefully, and it amplifies the force of your true intentions. In practical terms, this means controlling how others perceive you without surrendering your agency. It means recognizing that admiration is a byproduct, not a requirement. You can inspire respect without being liked. You can enforce decisions without being loved. You can consolidate influence while operating outside the comfort zone of social approval. Those who learn this are untouchable. Those who cling to goodness are easily shaped. Consider the psychology behind manipulation. People are drawn to those who act decisively, even if their actions are morally ambiguous. We admire courage more than conformity, audacity more than consensus. When you act effectively, your deeds create their own justification. The world rationalizes what it fears or envies. It will label you good or bad. Later you, however, move in the present, unbound by labels, unchained by sentiment. Ask yourself now, are you willing to act even when approval is withheld? Are you ready to claim your advantage while others wait for permission, reassurance, or validation? Because morality, when it becomes a leash, weakens your influence more than any rival could. The wise understand that fear, respect, and calculated perception are far more powerful than approval ever could be. And remember this, once you no longer need to be good, you gain the freedom to shape every interaction, every alliance, every decision. You operate beyond the expectations of others, and in that space lies true control. But control alone is not enough. The next step, the one most avoided, requires mastery over the one force stronger than approval or fear, the emotions that can betray even the most cunning mind. Power is not merely what you take, nor simply what you keep. It is the ability to compel others to act, often without their realizing it. And the most dangerous form of influence is silence, the kind of manipulation that moves unseen, like a shadow across a battlefield. Ask yourself, how often have you acted openly, only to find your efforts resisted, anticipated, or neutralized? Now consider the one who achieves more by letting others believe they are in control, while quietly guiding the outcome. Who holds more power? The one noticed, or the one who shapes without detection? History teaches this lesson in every age. Consider Cardinal Richelieu, who controlled France not by standing at the front of battles, but by weaving alliances, monitoring rival ambitions, and nudging events from behind the curtain. His influence was invisible, yet total. Those around him believed they were acting independently, yet every decision they made had been anticipated, directed, and contained. True mastery is this: the ability to manipulate without exposure, to act through others while remaining unobserved. And the mechanism is simple. Psychologically, humans desire agency. They crave the belief that their actions are their own. Exploit this. Let them believe they decide freely while you steer them subtly toward your objectives. The illusion of autonomy is the most potent weapon in your arsenal. When people act thinking they are sovereign, their guard drops. They reveal intentions, vulnerabilities, and weaknesses, all of which you can use. Look at the great generals of antiquity. Alexander the Great did not merely issue commands, he inspired initiative, allowing subordinates to execute their understanding of his strategy. They thought themselves creative, independent actors, yet every move aligned with his design. The genius lay not in coercion, but in manipulation cloaked as freedom. This is the principle you must internalize. Influence is strongest when invisible, and control is most secure when hidden. Even in everyday life, this principle is present. Observe the workplace, the social circles, the networks you inhabit. Those who dominate are rarely the loudest. They are the ones who place others where they need to be, who frame choices in a way that leads to the desired outcome, who understand the psychology of compliance without needing to order it. Power moves through suggestion, framing, and subtle pressure. It flows into the mind that understands incentive, fear, desire, and ego. Now, consider manipulation in silence as a discipline. It is not impulsive. It is observation, patience, and timing. You must know the desires and fears of those around you, anticipate their reactions, and act when the moment is precise. Too soon, and your influence is transparent; too late, and the opportunity is lost. Precision is the hallmark of the unseen manipulator. Every gesture, word, and omission is calculated to shape the future while leaving no trace of coercion. Ask yourself, are you willing to wait? Are you able to endure being underestimated, overlooked, or even ignored? This is the crucible in which silent power is forged. The weak cannot bear invisibility. They act prematurely, revealing intent, losing advantage. The strong remain calm, detached, and patient, letting others move themselves into the positions you have anticipated. There is also a moral paradox here. Manipulation in silence is often judged harshly by those who cannot comprehend it. Yet morality, in the pursuit of influence, is an irrelevant luxury. Effectiveness is the standard. Those who act openly are applauded. Those who act invisibly are feared. Both paths achieve results. One secures control without provoking opposition. That is mastery. And consider the psychological consequences. Once people realize they have been guided, subtly and invisibly, they rarely resent the manipulator. They are grateful for guidance or rationalize their own role in the outcome. You become not a tyrant, but an architect of choices. Their compliance is voluntary, their loyalty earned without exposure, their actions aligned with your designs. This is influence perfected. So ask yourself now, can you act without recognition? Can you guide without revealing? Can you achieve without needing praise, approval, or visibility? The answers to these questions determine whether you will be a pawn in the world or a player moving unseen across the board. And once you master this, once silence becomes your instrument, you will discover something even more powerful, the ability to bend the ambitions, fears, and decisions of others to your will, without ever drawing attention to yourself. But that is only the beginning, because the next lesson will teach you how to combine this invisible control with the deliberate orchestration of desire and fear, where even the strongest minds become instruments in your hands. Power is most absolute when it is unseen. When others believe they act freely, you control the outcome. Influence is silent. Control is invisible, and those who cannot perceive your hand will never resist it. Ask yourself, do you act openly, craving recognition, or do you move where no one notices, shaping events before they even realize it? Do you let the world decide, or do you decide first, quietly, relentlessly? The mastery of unseen control is not cruelty, it is strategy. It is the art of bending human desire, fear, and ambition without revealing your hand. It is the mark of those who rise while others stumble, blinded by their own assumptions. Now, you hold a glimpse of this power. Will you seize it? Will you refine it? Will you rise above the herd that obeys, reacts, and fears? Comment below with your thoughts on this dark strategy. Subscribe for more Machiavellian lessons, where power is revealed to those willing to see, and share this video with those ready to step beyond the illusions society worships. The world favors the unseen. Will you be its master?